Hello, my friends. This is Dan Lewis once again, and this is lecture number 7 on the artifacts in the British Museum and the relationship to the Bible. We're starting on slide 92, so if you can find that, we will begin there and will take us this lecture up through slide 112. In this particular section, we want to look at part of Israel's kingdom history, especially the rise of the Assyrian Empire, its encroachment into Western Asia Minor, and the kingship of Hezekiah. And so if you will look at slide 93, you will see an artifact that is a rather large stone from a tomb in southern Jerusalem, which has on it an epitaph. And the details of this epitaph are described on slide 94. What is particularly significant about this epitaph is that it describes a person in the royal household of Judah who is called the one over the house. Now, this expression, this title, the one over the house, in fact, is a title that you find given to two men in the Bible, both of whom are mentioned in Isaiah 22, Shebna and Eliakim. And in this particular case, if you wish to reference Isaiah 22, you'll discover that Shebna is the one who was building a rather elaborate tomb for himself, and Isaiah the prophet rebukes him because of this elaborate building project of his own tomb. And in that particular passage, he is also called the one who is over the house. Now, unfortunately, in this epitaph, part of the name is missing, which goes along with the title, the one who is over the house. But the part that remains leads most scholars to believe that this is a reference to Shebna, or as it would be in Hebrew, Shebaniah. In any case, it is an artifact that relates directly to the 8th century before Christ and the time of Isaiah. Slide 95, I want to just say a word about the encroachment of Assyria into Western Asia. The Assyrians, of course, had been turning their attention already to Western Asia. We've seen that in our last lecture with the tribute of Jehu to Shalmaneser III. And we've also seen it even earlier than that, in which Ahab, the king of the northern nation, was part of a coalition that fought against the Assyrians at the Battle of Karkar. Now we find a new Assyrian empire has designs in Western Asia, and his name is Tiglath-Pileser III. Or if you happen to be reading an older English Bible, such as the King James Version, he will be simply called Pul, P-U-L. But Tiglath-Pileser is his more familiar name. And if you look at slide 96, you will see a depiction of Tiglath-Pileser III in this bas-relief, which has shows two panels. There's an upper panel that shows a city, probably Ashtaroth in northern Israel, which was attacked by Tiglath-Pileser III. You will see an Assyrian soldier in the middle, and then you will see 4 figures facing the right and fading off of the broken slab. These would be northern Israelites who are going into exile because their city has been captured by the Assyrians. If you look at their clothing, you will see it's very similar to the clothing that we saw on the black obelisk of Shalmaneser. And then in the panel beneath that, you will see a depiction of Tiglath-Pileser himself in his chariot. Slide 97 gives you some details about this particular slab. And it notes that Tiglath-Pileser was the first of the Assyrian emperors to practice the wide double deportation of people that he conquered. And by double deportation, what I mean is he not only moved major populations out of their ancestral lands, he then moved colonists into that same area. So he displaced people in both directions. And the essential idea was that people who lived in an area that was not their homeland would be less apt to be patriotic and less apt to rebel against the Assyrian Empire. In any case, we can look at Tiglath-Pileser as the first of the big people movers of the Assyrian monarchs. In slide 98, there is a close-up of Tiglath-Pileser III. This, of course, is the same from the same slab that we just saw, but you can see it in much more detail, and you can see that he stands underneath an umbrella. Immediately behind him is the chariot driver, or well, I should say immediately to his left is the chariot driver, and immediately behind him is a smooth-shaven figure. And in Assyrian art, smooth-shaven figures usually depict eunuchs. In this particular depiction, you can see the style of the Assyrian chariot and the horses that pull the chariot. And then in slide 99, there is a number of details about this depiction and about Tiglath-Pileser himself and the way that this slab was found on the walls of his central palace at Calah. Slide 100 also shows Tiglath-Pileser. This particular depiction does not have an inscription, but from one of the writings that we have in other texts about the Assyrians, it mentions that Tiglath-Pileser took Menahem of Israel as a vassal. Menahem, of course, was the Israelite king who followed in the wake of Jeroboam II. And in this particular text it says, "As for Menahem, I overwhelmed him like a snowstorm, and he fled like a bird alone and bowed to my feet. I returned him to his place and imposed tribute upon him, gold, silver, linen garments with multicolored trimmings." So, Assyrian encroachment generally meant tribute to those nations which now felt that they had no choice but to become vassals of the great Assyrian Empire. Slide 101 is a close-up of Tiglath-Pileser III, his head and shoulders, and you will notice that he has this particular gesture in which his hand is outstretched, his right hand. You'll see that in the previous slide it is depicted the same way, except that his arm is actually broken off, but you can tell that it was outstretched if you could have seen the whole thing. And then back on slide 98, where you have Tiglath-Pileser in the chariot, you see that same gesture. This particular gesture is typical of the Assyrian monarchs because it is a religious sign of submission to the gods of Assyria, the god Ashur, or other of the gods within the pantheon. There are other inscriptions that talk about Tiglath-Pileser's encroachment. Here we see a statement from the annalistic records of Tiglath-Pileser that says he conquered Rezin of Damascus. Rezin, incidentally, is mentioned in the Old Testament by name. He also overthrew Pekah and placed Hoshea as the king over them in northern Israel. And Hoshea will be the last of the northern Israelite kings before Assyria will take them captive. So there's some details about that on slide 102. And then we come to slide 103, which shows Tiglath-Pileser with his foot upon the neck of an enemy. Now, this particular gesture of putting your foot on the neck of an enemy is described in the book of Joshua, chapter 10. Joshua has told his commanders that they are to put their foot upon the neck of an enemy. And in slide 104, you'll find that passage, which is Joshua 10 and verse 24. In slide 105, we have what is called the Nimrud prism. This particular prism, which is described in some detail on slide 106, tells us about the invasion of the northern kingdom of Israel by the Assyrians, this time under Shalmaneser V. The capital of the northern kingdom, which at that time was Samaria, is going to be sacked and partially burned. Many people are going to be taken prisoners. In fact, according to Sargon II, the successor of Shalmaneser V, they deported from Samaria more than 27,000 prisoners and dislocated them to other parts of the empire. While Shalmaneser V is the one who invaded Samaria in the north and took it captive and ended the life of the northern kingdom, he passed from the throne, died actually, during the siege. And Sargon II apparently finished up this siege, and after he had finished it up, he actually took credit for the entire siege. But you have both of these names associated with the invasion of Samaria in the north, Shalmaneser V and Sargon II. In slide 107, you have another depiction of Sargon, this time with either his son or perhaps an officer in his army. They are standing facing each other. And you can see the same gesture in the hand of the man who is facing Tiglath-Pileser. Slide 108 gives you some details about that. Interestingly enough, there was a time when there were no records of Sargon II existing in excavated materials. The only reference we had to him was actually in the Bible. And because of that, some suggested that maybe Sargon wasn't even a real person. But in time, we excavated enough materials, and these slabs are some of them, in which Sargon II is mentioned by name in cuneiform text. So Sargon certainly was a real person. Slide 109, you have a composite figure which once graced the entryway to one of the royal palaces of the Assyrians, this one from Khorsabad. The idea of a composite figure should be familiar to you from the Old Testament, because we have at least one kind of composite figure very popular, which were the cherubim over the Ark of the Covenant, which had the face of a person and wings, such as an eagle's wings and so on. This composite figure has the face of a human, it has the body and legs of a bull, but it has the wings of an eagle. This kind of iconography was very popular in the ancient world, and of course, when you get to a book like the book of Daniel in the Old Testament, you find several depictions of composite creatures. Slide 110 tells you a little bit about this particular composite creature. It's quite large, weighs probably in the vicinity of about 30 tons. So quite a task, actually, moving this from ancient Assyria to the British Museum in London. One thing you'll notice if you look at this composite figure is that he has 5 legs. This is, again, typical of Assyrian depictions of these kinds of creatures. And the 5 legs are there so that whether you're looking at it from the side or whether you're looking at it from the front, you will always see at least 4 legs. The 5th leg is there really for cosmetic reasons. Then there is slide 111, which shows a guardian figure. This is a very familiar mystical figure from Babylonian religion and mythology. This particular figure is also composite. He has the body of a man, but he has the head of an eagle and wings of an eagle. And you'll see that in his left hand there is a bucket, and in his right hand there is a cone. This, again, is very typical of the Assyrian depictions of guardian spirits. And it is generally thought that the figure dipped the cone into the bucket and fertilized the sacred date palm. The stylized tree on the right side of this bas-relief is the date palm. And so this was part of Assyrian fertility ritual. One of the interesting things about this figure is that C.S. Lewis used this figure as his model for Tash in the Narnia series. I don't know if you've read the Narnia series, or particularly the one called The Last Battle. But in The Last Battle, Tash, which is a figure that Lewis used as a major figure in this novel, was actually taken from the bas-relief here in the British Museum. Slide 112 gives you some more detail about this eagle-headed figure and the protective magical powers that it supposedly possessed.